It's been a revolving door. No matter who's back there at running back, they've been effective running the football. So if Jalen Hurts gets healthy, if the ankle is back to where it was, then you say, hey, styles make fights, can beat anybody on any given day. Now, the problem is with a team like that, if you get to the players, you're probably not going to have three given game days like that in a row. And, that's probably your ceiling. But nonetheless, it's a lot to be excited about.
He's John McMullen. I would be Jody McDonald. That'd make us the Mac and Mac guys here on a playoff football Monday. That's right. As of right now, if the playoffs were to start, the Philadelphia Eagles would be in, and their above 500 record has them earned a spot in this year's postseason tournament. Johnny Mac, I was thinking about this when I had my dog out this morning. Because, yes, the Eagles would be in. No, they have to finish out strong. Got to be watching them next week for damn sure, and then we'll see where everything sits after next week. There's a distinct possibility that the Eagles will have already locked up a wild card spot next weekend, and going into that last week, we're wondering about if the Cowboys will have anything to play for. There's a chance the Eagles will have nothing to play for, but I don't even want to go there yet. Just on the assumption that the Eagles make the playoffs next year. You talked earlier about Packer fans who just don't get it because they've never had to deal with it. It went from Brett Favre to Aaron Rodgers, and they've got one of the best quarterbacks in football every year for the past 3 decades, so they just don't understand. I liked your phrase, how the other half lives. The half here in Philly has not been that bad, if you think
No, it
about it.
hasn't overall.
If
No.
they make the playoffs this year, that means they will have made the playoffs 4 out of the last 5 years. Yeah, last year was a dumpster fire, and it cost Doug Peterson his job, and Carson Wentz talked his way out of town. It was a tough season to have to muddle through. But if they make the playoffs this year, Dougie P did make it 3 years in a row, and if Sirianni makes it in his first year, that's not a bad little run to be in the playoffs 4 or 5 years. Of course, it started with a Super Bowl, so the trajectory hasn't been what everybody wanted. But making the playoffs 4 times in 5 years, if you're a fan of this team, you really can't do much pitching.
Well, you can.
Shouldn't be doing that much
No,
pitching, I
you're
should
right.
say.
You're
Sorry.
right, but
Thank you for correcting me.
Yeah, and it's interesting because the NFL has a rule change this year, in that coaches who have fired their coaches, so this might put an impetus on people, can start interviewing assistants for other teams early. So, who we Raiders, Jaguars are the only teams in that category right now. They can start interviewing coaches, from other teams if they get permission. So a lot of caveats, but a little bit different. And we go back to Doug Peterson making the playoffs 3 years. You don't give him a mulligan. That's the kind of stuff you start to raise your eyebrow about. But, that's in the past now. And Nick Sirianni, you and I, we said this team's got a chance to be right around 500. I think we had both
had 8
wins.
wins.
So,
and
yeah.
they're going to
So
get that.
they got that. They're at that, and now they have a chance to get 9 or 10 double digits, which would be pretty impressive. Yeah, I mean, I don't know how you could first time starting quarterback, rookie head coach. I think Jeffrey Lurie got it right again. Jeffrey Lurie's been very good at hiring head coaches. You got to give him credit. Again, plenty to criticize from Jeffrey Lurie's standpoint. Why you're even in that position to need to hire a head coach at where you were. That is certainly something you look at the front office for. But they generally get it right, and it looks like they got it right with Nick Sirianni. Again, hopefully the shelf life is longer. You're never going to predict anybody goes to the Super Bowl because it's really hard to do. And they have a long way to go. I don't think they're a legitimate contender. But, on a particular Sunday, because of the way they run the football, if you saw Green Bay, Cleveland, Jody, on Christmas. That's the best team in the NFC. That's the number one seed in the NFC. Cleveland ran the football at will. And if they continued to run the football, they probably would have won the game. And they got away from it. So if you think about the Eagles in their rushing attack, now you got to be concerned with Miles Sanders now. You got to be concerned with Jordan Howard. So they're starting to have some injury issues. But it's been a revolving door. No matter who's back there at running back, they've been effective running the football. So if Jalen Hurts gets healthy, if the ankle is back to where it was, then you say, hey, styles make fights, can beat anybody on any given day. Now, the problem is with a team like that, if you get the players, you're probably not going to have 3 given game days like that in a row. And, that's probably your ceiling. But nonetheless, it's a lot to be excited about.
And I will defend Sirianni in this vein. I think a lot of Eagle analysis comes out after the fact, just looking at the final box score and determining whether the Eagles did run the ball enough or not. And some people were questioning Rick Nick. How does he not come out and just run it down the Giants' throats? Why he got away from the running game? That's our strength. Here's what you really need to do. If you want to give a true, accurate analysis, you have to go through it almost play by play. You certainly have to go through it series by series, and each first down possession. If you run the ball on first down and get nothing or a yard, now you're looking at 2nd and 9. If the play caller / offensive corner / head coach decides to pass on 2nd and 9, who's going to really critique him? Who's going to say, no, run the ball up the gut again between the tackles on 2nd and 9? I think most Eagle fans in the moment would say, well, yeah, pass the ball. We need 9 yards on 2nd down. You better pass the ball. But then if the pass doesn't get completed, why didn't you run the ball? Well, wait a minute. You just said you would have thrown the ball. Why are you second-guessing the guy now in 2020 hindsight? And he threw the ball. The Eagles didn't do a heck of a lot on first down in their runs in the first half. So, yeah, Sirianni passed a little bit more than what has been effective for them over the last several weeks. But you got to go by possession, for series by series, and then tell me that Nick Sirianni just came in and said, hey, run the ball. Run the ball. We can throw the ball. Let's have some fun throwing the ball today. That was not the way it played out yesterday. That was not the in-drive decisions he was making. End of the day, look at the box score. Yeah, it looks like he got away from the run a little bit. I don't think that was actually the case yesterday, John.
No, you run for 175 yards in 7 consecutive games. And I don't know what people think. Do they think that's sustainable? I mean, it's the first time since 1985. At some point, you're going to run up against a team that's going to sell out. And you ran up against a team that sold out because they said, all right, we don't think this quarterback is going to run the football. So that vaunted +1, which the Eagles have often described Jalen Hurts as, and how he throws, he's the key to it all besides the offensive line, as far as the success of the running game. And the Giants correctly surmised, all right, they're being cautious because of his ankle. They're not going to run him. And at that point, it becomes a different game. And yeah, people either understand it or they don't understand it. But you can't just say, we're going to run for 175 yards because you ran for 175 yards in 7 consecutive games. It doesn't work like that. That's why it hasn't happened since 1985. What is that, Jody? You're the math guy. How many years is that?
1985 would be 15 plus 22, 37.
There you go. 37 years. With Walter Payton, by the way, who, is, for those who don't follow history, pretty good running back. You don't have Walter Payton. So what they've been doing with the rushing attack is pretty phenomenal. So if you're going to complain and say Nick Sirianni's getting, I don't know what you want. You can't be happy because this team is as run heavy as it gets, especially in this era of the NFL. It doesn't mean, and if the Eagles do make the playoffs and you do start facing better teams, remember, and the Eagles deserve credit for this, and I can't say this enough. They had a tough early season schedule, and that's why they started poorly. And they've had a very easy, even easier than projected because of injuries and COVID and everything else and things sort of aligning correctly. I don't know how many times I've said on our show, Jody, everywhere else, JAKIB Media, WIP with you, they had a 6-day span where they were given 2 wins. They were given 2 wins. So all your hand wringing, I said that at the beginning of the 6-day span, and I'm sitting here at the end of the 6-day span. That's as easy as it gets in the NFL. Garrett Gilbert on a week's preparation and Jake Fromm on 3-week preparation is as easy as it gets. Now, they deserve credit for taking advantage of it, but when you face better teams, you're going to have to do some different things. So I joke about scrimmage. Hey, Nick Sirianni, use it as a scrimmage. You're not going to lose the game. Get better at certain things so you can be better if you have to face Green Bay or Tampa Bay or Dallas or the Los Angeles Rams or whomever. Notice I didn't put Arizona in there.
And, oh, by the way, Garrett Gilbert was better than anything the New York Giants put out there at quarterback yesterday. At least he hung in there.
Garrett Gilbert was much better than Jake Fromm. Much. I mean, worlds better than Jake Fromm.
And I would add him with Mike Glennon, too. And, oh, by the way, he was better than the returning quarterback for the Washington football team last night because Taylor Heineke looked awful. Now, the Cowboys brought some serious pressure. They really have been. They've gotten healthy. Nobody's gotten suspended on their defensive line over the last couple of weeks. All of a sudden, they've got one of the more formidable pass rushes in the National Football League, and he was facing that last night, but he was making massive mistakes. Every time you turn around, somebody was going into the end zone for the Cowboys. I was on the air for the first half of that game, and the second half I couldn't even watch because the Cowboys just kept scoring touchdown after touchdown after touchdown. Couldn't take it anymore, and neither could Taylor Heineke. But we'll worry about the Cowboys once we get past Taylor Heineke and his buddies next week. John, they did start slow. And maybe I got to take the eagle-colored glasses off, but I almost found myself making excuses for them yesterday that, yeah, it's because the NFL kind of squeezed them, made them play on a Tuesday. They were ready to go on Sunday. I didn't think the Eagles were screwed, and people screamed bloody murder that they were being screwed. The NFL did what they had to do. Your column on Philly Voice was dead on to the point that the NFL was more worried about saving the season than they were about giving the Eagles proper treatment. But they went ahead and won the game anyway. But you knew coming into this week, it was just going to be a 5-day turnaround and a short week and difficult to prep. Do you think that had anything to do with the lame Birds first half? I'd feel better saying that if they hadn't done the same exact thing the previous week against Washington when they had a ton of downtime and didn't play well in the first half and then turned it up in the second half. Do you think the short week had any effect on
I think it did a little bit as far as the start went, because remember, not only was a short week, Nick Sirianni was not there for most of it because he tested positive. So he's doing everything virtually. So he wasn't there. That probably entered into it. You also had a holiday. So it was going to be a weird week, even if you played on Sunday and there was no COVID spike. You're going to have less time. People were going to be given time off. So I think that all probably conflated into something. But I like Alex Singleton talked after the game, and he said, hey, man, give me a basketball schedule. I like to play. I think there's a lot of players like that. Now, the physical nature of the game, you can't play, you need to get your body right. But as far as practice versus games, most players, they want to get out there and play. So if you're healthy, and the Eagles were relatively healthy, taking COVID aside, relatively healthy as far as the guys who were able to play, injury wise, I'm talking about. At this point, it's probably better, if anything. Just get back out there, just play against a bad, football team and get on to the meat portion of the schedule. And now, unfortunately, they did get banged up a little bit, especially in the backfield. So we'll have to keep an eye on that. Nate Herbig got hurt, have to keep an eye on him. But Miles did break his hand. So you got to see what type of break it is. Obviously, it's very difficult to play running back with a big club on your hand. So it'll be interesting to see how quickly he can get back on the field. But that's just part of the NFL. But the worst part, and Doug Peterson used to always say this, when you have injuries at the same position, and they had Miles and Jordan Howard go down with the stinger. And typically stingers, you're like, that's not that big of a deal. But Jordan had that stinger in, 2019, shut down the season. So I think it's a little bit more concerning with him.
Let me ask you about Miles in his hand. You kind of stated it a couple of times. He has a broken hand.
Yeah, he has a broken hand there.
Have the Eagles said he has a broken hand?
No, they have not officially said it. Nick
Right.
will say it today. But it's I got it from a few different people, and I think even Ian Rappaport is reporting it this morning. Yeah, Eagles running back Miles Sanders broke a bone in his hand yesterday. He'll have an MRI and additional test today to determine if there's other damage and whether or not he can play through it. So Miles was also seen leaving the stadium in a cast. So he's got a broken hand.
Right. And I just know the Eagles didn't announce it as such, but yeah, it's about 98% sure that he has a broken hand, a bone in his hand. And here's the issue and the problem. And I thought Miles played well again yesterday. He is far and away their biggest big play back. Jordan Howard's good at what he does. We know that Boston Scott just loves to score touchdowns against the New York Giants, but they're done with playing the Giants this year. Miles is their home run hitter out of the backfield, both running it and when he catches it. And that's why I said when he catches it, because he doesn't always catch it. That's the weakness in Miles' game is his hands, his feet, his dexterity, his ability to spot the hole, to throw it into another gear. There's a lot of pluses in Miles Sanders' game. One of the minuses is his hands. And he, from time to time, puts the ball on the ground. And he, from time to time, drops a pass as well. If you don't have both mitts, that's going to accentuate the parts of your game that may, from time to time, come into question. And that's the ability to hold on the ball and or catch the ball. That'd be a pretty big loss. If Miles is done for the year, and there's no IR anymore. There's only 2 games left. If you went IR, it'd be 3 games. So you're counting him out of a playoff game? I don't think so. Unless they know for a fact that he's going to be gone for 6 weeks, I don't think they're going to put him on IR. Number one, you're going to miss him. And number two, and it shouldn't be that big a deal, but most football teams make it out to be, you're going to lose a roster spot. You're going to have to carry him as inactive. If it's a week-to-week thing, you're going to have to keep him on the roster and use one of your inactives for him. This injury could turn out to be pretty significant, Johnny Mac.
Yeah, I think more so from a football standpoint, as you said. I mean, Miles is their best running back, and we know you mentioned some of the issues. And certainly had another drop in the game last night in the first half. That was part of it. Dallas Goedert dropped, so that was part of their ineffective offense as well. You're right on IR. It's 3 games, so at this point, if they get bad news and they put them on IR, that's
and let me jump in and correct myself. They can't put him on IR because he was already on IR this year.
That's
If
true.
you
And then
put
he
a
beat
guy on
down for the
IR a
season.
second time, you're done.
Yeah,
You can go
and
home. Start
that's
your
what
vacation.
and that's what happened with Jack Driscoll as well, his second IR. So if they do put him on IR, that means it's a season-ending injury. I don't think it hurts to carry him. If it is, even if it's a 4-week injury, and it's very unlikely he's going to play again this season. I don't think it's that big of a deal to carry him. If you look at and now it's become, even with the COVID positives, the Eagles had 4 inactive players yesterday, and they were Reed Sinnett, Kerry Vincent, Tay Gowan, and Marlon Tuipulotu. So, you know, when you're getting down to your game day 47 anyway, uh, you're not making difficult decisions, is what I'm saying. So you can waste a spot on Miles Sanders and sleep comfortably at night. So I don't think that part will be any issue. The issue is, what do the doctors find when they do the further test, and they probably are already done them on Miles, and is it a real season-ending injury? Obviously, if it is, that's going to affect the Eagles greatly.
And I think that it will actually handicap their running game some. But we need to wait for the information to come out, although I would say it's not trending well for Miles and his ability to play again later this year. All right, one guy I want to give some props to yesterday, Johnny Mac, because I may have used the word bust from time to time in describing him, more so affixed to the guy who acquired him than the actual player himself. But Jannard Avery hadn't done a whole hell of a lot since the Eagles gave up a draft pick to acquire him in season in a previous year, and he just hasn't been a fit. He wasn't necessarily a fit in the previous defensive coordinator scheme, Mr. Schwartz. He hasn't been a true fit for this defensive coordinator scheme. The Eagles just either haven't figured out how to use him, or they overrated what they were acquiring when they got him. He had some big plays yesterday, and I don't know if Jannard Avery's going to make any more big plays this year or make any more big plays for the Eagles ever, as a matter of fact, because his track record and his production here has been limited. In the given day that he steps up and makes big plays, you got to give a tip cap to the guy. And yesterday, Jannard Avery was a little bit of a key contributor for the Eagles defense. Haven't seen it in a long time, but he did get the job done yesterday.
Yeah, he did. He made the big, I would argue the game shifting play, and that was the Rodney McLeod interception, which gave the Eagles the short field at the beginning of the second half. Because remember, Jody, it was the ugly first half, and then the Giants get the football right away, and you say, all right, well, maybe they'll take the shrink wrap up Jake Fromm. I don't know. Maybe he's better than what he looked. Obviously, it turned out not to be the case, and they weren't going to let him do anything, which is an indictment of Joe Judge, speaking of, other people, as you're mentioning, with Howie Roseman. And then it's Saquon Barkley up the middle for no gain, obviously. And then second play was the Fromm pass that was intercepted. And, it was Jannard Avery. So he was the guy who got the big pass rush. Now, he might have been called for a penalty, depending on the day, because he got his hand in the face mask. And if it's Tom Brady or Aaron Rodgers, you probably got the flag. Let's be honest. So a little bit of good fortune there as well. But the pass rush part of it, it was great. And it was interesting. He only played 20 reps. I had to look at it. He seemed like he was out there more because he was noticeable. And that part is good. But we were talking about size with Devontae Smith. Obviously, again, Jannard Avery was a 4th-round pick, I believe. He's undersized. He's a pass rusher. He's very athletic. Jim Schwartz wanted him as an edge rusher. Now Jonathan Gannon is using him as a Sam linebacker. some of those size deficiencies we talk about. He doesn't fit a measurable. Obviously, he doesn't have Devontae Smith's talent, but he can get after the quarterback. Problem is, it's too small to play defensive end. The Eagles don't play that third linebacker enough to where he's going to be very meaningful. But he can make a play, and he showed it against the Giants.
And speaking of linebackers making plays, TJ Edwards had 16 tackles.
Yeah.
That's a lot of tackles. And oh, by the way, it wasn't like the Giants ran a lot of plays. Like they had the ball all day yesterday. They had a lot of 1, 2, 3 punts, or at least one first down, 2, 3 punts, which means that you only have X amount of chances to make tackles when the other team isn't continuing to move the ball down the field. Damn, that guy's a lightning rod on defense right now. And it seems like he's been the main linebacker of the Eagles forever. That's not the case. He was not starting at the beginning of the year. Everybody has already forgotten that he was a guy coming off the bench at the beginning of the year because he's become as dominant a linebacker as the Eagles have. And I did get this one right. I predicted after one of his good games. The Eagles really should be talking to him about a contract extension. And they did get it done and locked him up for next year. He's one of the more underrated Eagles this year, J-Mac. If you were putting out guys and what was expected of them before the season started, nobody would have had TJ Edwards anywhere in the top. Forget about the top 10, top 20 most productive Eagle players. Not on that list.
I think your buddy Glenn Mack now asked me that when I was on. It was Mack and Mack and Mack on WIP. And he said, who was, and I went TJ Edwards on the defensive side of the football. They were trying to trade TJ Edwards in the offseason. Didn't think he was a fit for this particular offense, defense, because they want, hybrid coverage. They want Davion Taylor types athleticism standpoint. Again, we talk about, and, one thing about TJ Edwards is he's so instinctive. And this was a TJ Edwards game, man. This was, if there was ever a TJ Edwards game, this was a TJ Edwards game because all they were doing is trying to run the football between the tackles. And that guy is an old school linebacker, comes downhill. And so it was perfect. And he played great. And he's been way better in pass coverage than anybody would have imagined because he's so instinctive. And everybody looks at the stopwatch. And they ignore that part of it. And it's bizarre to me. It really is, because if you take one false step when you're playing linebacker in the NFL and you run a 4.4, well, you're slower than the guy who's instinctive running the 4.6, 4.65 that TJ Edwards can. So he's been this defense took off for two reasons. One, if you're being honest, schedule. All right. No more Tom Brady's, Patrick Mahomes. And then because of TJ Edwards and what he has brought to this defense, and as the really main 3-down linebacker, and he showed it again against the New York Giants. But you also said box score, and people look at the box score, Jody. And this is a perfect example of what you were talking about. The New York Giants, shockingly, ran more plays than the Eagles yesterday. I think it was 76-63, only because of the end of the game. And, they had the Mike Glennon drive, where everybody had checked out. But again, if you just pick up the box score and you look at it and you go, what's going on here? And that's why you can't do that type of thing. And you have to look at the context of the game. And obviously the Eagles dominated that game.
They dominated on the scoreboard. They dominated in the box score. They dominated, period. In the second half. Up until half, it was actually
that was a 17-play, 75-yard drive. Mike Glennon.
The Mike Glennon final drive.
Mike Glennon drive, I like to call it. 17 plays.
Which by the way, I don't know. You were there, so maybe you can remember. Was Edwards still on the field at that point, or had he already taken part?
He played most of the game, so they did make pretty significant substitutions. I got to be honest. I was right.
You have your chart. How many plays did the Giants run, and how many plays was Edwards on the field? Because you're right.
76, and Edwards was on there for 72, so 95%.
Damn, so he didn't come off the field.
No.
Okay, then that's how he ended up with it's just number 16 jumps out at you. If a guy has a 10 tackle day in the NFL, you go, wow, he was really involved. If you get 12, man, that's outstanding. If you get 14, you go, oh my God, how did he make 16 tackles? Is unheard of. You just don't see that in the National Football League. So that's.
But here's how you can tell how the game went. Milton Williams had 42 reps. Hassan Ridgeway had 36. Teron Jackson had 36. Cameron Malveaux, his first game, 34.
He played 34 snaps yesterday?
Yeah, 34. Zach McPherson, 27. Andre Satcher, 25. Josiah Scott, 25. Jared Maiden, 25. That's how you tell it was a blowout.
Maiden played 20. The Maiden starter got 25 off the bench.
Yep.
I couldn't keep track of the secondary guys. They were running in and out of there. All right, he's John McMullen. I'm Jody McDonald. We still got an hour left to play on a Monday after a Birds put themselves in control of their own destiny win against the Giants. Bob Groats of the Delco Times going to join us coming up in about 20 minutes. We got plenty of time to continue to break down Eagles football with you here on Birds 365.